Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're taking a closer look at Mahatma Gandhi. And going beyond that simple Father of India label to really understand how he steered India's fight for independence. We've got a ton of sources to dig into for this one. Historical accounts, analyses of his movements, even looking at his global impact. Get ready for some surprises, too. Like, did you know a salt tax became this huge symbol of resistance?
Oh, yeah, the salt tax. Fascinating how these seemingly small things can become so powerful.
Exactly. And we'll also see how Gandhi's ideas resonated way beyond India's borders.
It's really incredible how Gandhi's own personal transformation is so intertwined with his political strategy. It wasn't just about, tactics. His deep commitment to nonviolence and truth, those became like a model for movements all over the world.
And our sources for this deep dive really highlight that. Like, we learn about some of his early experiences with racial discrimination in South Africa. There's this one incident that's particularly jarring,
Oh, tell me about it.
where he's thrown off a train just for refusing to give up his first-class seat. That was reserved for whites. I mean, talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah, I mean, that event in South Africa was pivotal. It really sparked his political awakening. And it's what pushed him to start experimenting with civil disobedience
Mm.
as a way to actually dismantle, that racial discrimination.
It's like that experience almost became a catalyst. It shaped his entire philosophy.
It did. It did.
Makes you think. We all face injustices in different ways. But what is it that leads someone to become a leader and take action like that?
Right. It's such a crucial question. But what stands out about Gandhi is that he didn't just, react to injustice. He was actively seeking solutions. And he was deeply influenced by, Indian spirituality
Hmm.
and thinkers like Tolstoy and Thoreau. And it all kind of converged into this unique approach to activism.
So in 1915, armed with these new ideas, he returns to India, ready to take on British imperialism. Now, he could have jumped right into this large-scale movement, right?
You'd think so, right?
But he chose a different path.
He did. He opted for this like strategic, almost surgical approach, starting at seemingly small, localized issues like the Champar and Keita movements are fantastic examples of this.
Yeah, those are great examples.
Mm.
I was so struck by the story of the Champaran indigo farmers. They were stuck in this system called Tinkathia, where they're forced to grow indigo, but at a loss. So it only benefited the British planters.
It was blatant exploitation.
Absolutely.
So that Tinkathia system was essentially economic coercion, really deeply embedded in that colonial structure. And what's remarkable is how Gandhi approached it. He didn't just barge in with demands. He meticulously documented the farmers' grievances and then amplified their voices to put pressure on the British authorities, and eventually this led to the abolition of that system.
Wow. And then there's Keita, where farmers are facing this devastating famine,
Oh, yeah.
but they were still expected to pay taxes.
It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really exposes this harsh reality of British rule. The colonial system was often completely indifferent to the suffering of Indians.
And, Gandhi made their struggles his own. He mobilized the farmers to resist tax payments until they got the relief they needed.
Which ultimately they did.
They did. Now, these early victories, they might seem small,
Yeah.
but they were monumental.
They were.
They were like these testing grounds for Satyagraha, truth force, which of course would become his central strategy. And these wins, they established his leadership and demonstrated the potential of nonviolent resistance. But I'm curious, do you think this type of approach could work today?
That is a thought-provoking question. I mean, while the specific struggles may differ, the core issues, like exploitation, power imbalances, those are still very much present. I mean, think about it. Workers' rights, environmental justice, access to healthcare, these are all modern-day echoes of the battles that Gandhi fought.
Absolutely. So it's about recognizing those systems of oppression,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the form they take. Now, these early victories were significant, but the non-cooperation movement, this is where things really escalated, wouldn't you say? This is where we see Gandhi challenging British authority on a national scale.
Absolutely. To really understand the impact of the non-cooperation movement, we need to grasp the context. India had just contributed significantly to the British war effort in World War I, but their sacrifices were met with, minimal rewards. And then you have the Rowlatt Act, which
Right.
basically granted the British the power to imprison people without trial. I mean, a blatant disregard for basic rights.
And then, of course, there's the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, this horrific event where peaceful protesters were brutally gunned down.
It's just awful.
It sent shockwaves throughout India. It really revealed the true brutality of the British Raj.
Exactly. And this event, along with the broken promises of self-governance, it fueled this widespread discontent. And Gandhi recognized this volatile atmosphere and seized the opportunity. He issued a call to boycott all things British, goods, institutions, titles, you name it.
It was bold.
It was a bold move.
What's incredible is that people listened. It's astounding to picture an entire nation collectively rejecting a system that had oppressed them for so long. And this boycott had a significant economic impact on British industries, signaling that, their grip on India, it was weakening.
It really was. And one of the most ingenious aspects of the movement was the emphasis on promoting homegrown products. It wasn't just about rejecting British goods. It was about empowering Indians to create their own economy, their own identity.
It makes you think about the potential for similar movements today. Imagine the impact if we collectively boycotted certain products, demanding ethical sourcing, supporting local businesses.
It could be revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
The non-cooperation movement really showcases the power of collective action, even against seemingly insurmountable forces like an empire.
From boycotts to the iconic Salt March, Gandhi certainly knew how to capture attention and make a statement. The image of him walking 240 miles with volunteers just to make salt.
It's powerful.
It's quite striking.
While it might seem unusual at first, the Salt March was a stroke of strategic brilliance. You see, the salt tax, imposed by the British, it affected every single Indian, rich or poor. It was a symbol of British exploitation that resonated with everyone. He understood the power of symbolism. By picking up a handful of salt from the seawater, he was directly challenging the British monopoly on salt production and distribution.
It's amazing how that seemingly simple act just sent shockwaves throughout India. People everywhere started making their own salt, refusing to pay the tax, engaging in acts of civil disobedience. Incredible how a single gesture sparked this nationwide movement.
The Salt March was much more than just a protest against the salt tax. It was a symbolic dismantling of British authority, this declaration that Indians would no longer be controlled or exploited.
It's amazing how it ignited the civil disobedience movement, taking things to a whole new level.
The Salt March really served as this catalyst for a much broader campaign of nonviolent resistance. The civil disobedience movement, it expanded the scope, targeting various aspects of British rule. People boycotted British goods, refused to pay taxes, even violated forest and liquor laws, all without resorting to violence.
And the sheer scale of participation is mind-boggling. Peasants, workers, women, students, everyone was involved.
Absolutely. The movement saw this huge surge in participation from all segments of society, demonstrating this widespread desire for freedom.
The role of women in this movement was particularly inspiring. We learned about figures like Sarojini Naidu, who took a leading role in protests and boycotts, proving that Indian women were a force to be reckoned with.
Their contributions were vital to the movement's success. They challenged traditional gender roles and demonstrated unwavering courage in the face of oppression.
It's fascinating how a symbolic act like the Salt March could trigger such widespread action. What do you think it was that finally pushed people to join the movement?
It's a complex question. Perhaps it was witnessing the courage of others, seeing that change was actually possible, or simply feeling this deep sense of injustice that could no longer be ignored. Whatever the reason, the civil disobedience movement really shows the power of collective action when people unite with this shared purpose.
But as we know, the British response was swift and brutal. They cracked down on the movement, arresting thousands, including Gandhi himself. They tried to silence dissent through censorship and force.
The British authorities, threatened by that growing momentum of the movement, resorted to their usual tactics of repression. However, their efforts backfired.
Right. Despite the crackdown, the movement continued to gain momentum. It showed just how deeply the desire for freedom ran within the Indian people. The British were forced to acknowledge the growing unrest, and eventually they came to the negotiating table. This led to the Gandhi-Irwin Pact in 1931.
The pact was a significant development. Although it fell short of granting complete independence, it did secure the release of political prisoners and allowed Indians to produce salt for personal use, marking a small but symbolic victory.
It wasn't a complete triumph, but it did signal a shift in power dynamics. These movements were more than just protests. They were exposing the vulnerabilities of the British Empire and forcing the colonial rulers to kind of reconsider their approach.
The impact of these movements extended far beyond India's borders. The Salt March and the civil disobedience movement, they resonated globally, inspiring other movements for justice and equality. They forced the world to question the legitimacy of colonial rule and fueled the rise of anti-colonial sentiments.
It's remarkable how a seemingly simple act of making salt could have such profound and far-reaching consequences.
Gandhi's genius lay in his ability to transform everyday actions into these potent symbols of resistance. He understood the power of connecting with people on a visceral level.
The fight for independence, however, was far from over. The outbreak of World War II brought new challenges and complexities. India, once again, found itself drawn into a conflict not of its choosing.
The war placed immense strain on India. Resources were diverted, the economy suffered, and people endured hardships. The British government, they kind of dangled this promise of dominion status after the war, but many Indian leaders saw through this tactic.
It was clear that the British were simply trying to delay the inevitable. They were not ready to relinquish their control over India.
Gandhi, sensing the growing frustration and recognizing the need for decisive action, launched the Quit India movement. His call to action was powerful and unambiguous: do or die. This marked a turning point in the struggle for independence.
The Quit India movement was like a culmination of decades of struggle, this final push to break free from British rule. The message was clear: India demanded complete and immediate independence.
The British response was predictable. They unleashed this wave of repression, arresting leaders, banning the Congress Party, employing violence to suppress the protests.
But even with their leaders imprisoned and facing this brutal suppression, the Indian people refused to be silenced. The Quit India movement took on this decentralized form, with ordinary citizens stepping up to lead protests and challenge British authority.
The movement demonstrated remarkable resilience. Workers went on strike, peasants refused to pay taxes, students boycotted schools, and acts of sabotage disrupted the colonial infrastructure. It was a testament to the unwavering spirit of the Indian people.
And let's not forget the crucial role women played in this movement. They were instrumental in organizing protests, disseminating information, providing support to the resistance. Figures like Aruna Asaf Ali became symbols of courage and defiance, inspiring others to join the fight.
Women's contributions were essential to the movement's success. They challenged patriarchal norms and proved their mettle in the face of adversity.
While the Quit India movement didn't result in immediate independence, it sent a clear message to the world. India would no longer tolerate colonial rule. It was a declaration of self-determination, setting the stage for the eventual transfer of power.
The movement showcased the depth of the Indian people's commitment to freedom and their willingness to sacrifice for their nation's future.
Throughout his journey, Gandhi remained steadfast in his commitment to nonviolence. It was the cornerstone of his philosophy, the driving force behind all his movements. He called it Satyagraha, meaning truth force. This concept is often misunderstood, isn't it?
It is indeed. Satyagraha is much more than passive resistance. It's an active force, a way to confront injustice with truth and moral courage.
Gandhi believed that enduring suffering without retaliation could ultimately transform the heart of the oppressor. It's a radical idea, a challenging one to grasp.
Gandhi's emphasis on ahimsa, or nonviolence, stemmed from his deep spiritual convictions. He saw it as a moral imperative, a way to break the cycle of violence and hatred. He believed that violence, even in response to injustice, would only perpetuate the cycle.
It's fascinating how he managed to translate this philosophy into a practical strategy for political change. It wasn't just about enduring suffering. It was about actively confronting injustice and demanding change through nonviolent means.
Gandhi's approach went beyond mere protest. He recognized the importance of self-reliance and championed the Swadeshi movement, encouraging Indians to boycott foreign goods and embrace local production. It was a way to empower people economically and culturally, reclaiming their own identity.
That's a powerful idea. It wasn't just about rejecting British goods. It was about building a self-sufficient India, rooted in its own values and traditions.
Gandhi also understood the need to address social injustices within Indian society. He initiated constructive programs aimed at uplifting marginalized communities, promoting education, fighting untouchability, and empowering women.
His vision extended beyond political independence. He envisioned a just and equitable society for all Indians, free from discrimination and oppression.
Gandhi's commitment to social justice was integral to his philosophy. He believed that true freedom encompassed not only political liberation, but also social and economic equality.
And his impact transcended national boundaries.
Mhm.
His ideas of nonviolent resistance inspired countless movements around the world, didn't they?
Absolutely. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela drew inspiration from Gandhi's philosophy, adapting his strategies to fight against racism and apartheid in their own countries. His ideas resonated across continents, demonstrating the universal appeal of nonviolent resistance.
It's incredible how a man who began by advocating for the rights of Indian workers in South Africa would go on to influence global movements for justice and equality.
Gandhi's journey highlights the interconnectedness of struggles for freedom and justice. His ideas transcended geographical boundaries and continue to inspire activists worldwide.
But it would be remiss not to acknowledge that Gandhi also faced his share of criticism. Some believed his methods were too slow, too passive, and wouldn't bring about real change.
There were those who advocated for armed struggle, arguing that nonviolence was insufficient to overthrow British rule. They viewed Gandhi's commitment to nonviolence as a sign of weakness.
And even within the independence movement, there were disagreements and frustrations. Some questioned his decisions to suspend movements following outbreaks of violence, but Gandhi remained resolute in his belief that violence was counterproductive and would only lead to further suffering.
He recognized the complexities of navigating a nonviolent movement, particularly in the face of provocation and state-sponsored violence. He understood the importance of maintaining the moral high ground.
Gandhi's life was a testament to his unwavering convictions. He lived and breathed his philosophy, never wavering from his belief in the power of truth and nonviolence. It's a tragic irony that a man who dedicated his life to peace met such a violent end. Gandhi's assassination in 1948 by a Hindu nationalist who vehemently opposed his message of reconciliation. It's a stark reminder of the forces that often resist change.
It really is. Gandhi's assassination was a devastating loss, not just for India, but for the entire world. It highlighted the fact that even the most compassionate voices can be silenced by hatred and intolerance.
His assassination was a profound loss, but his legacy, it continues to resonate. His teachings on peace, nonviolence, and self-reliance, they seem more relevant than ever in our world today. We're grappling with conflict, inequality, climate change.
Absolutely. Gandhi's life offers a compelling example of how one person's actions can make a real difference. His unwavering belief in truth and nonviolence. It challenged an empire and inspired millions to fight for freedom.
It's a legacy that continues to inspire, reminding us that we have the power to stand up for what we believe in, to challenge injustice, and to strive for a better future.
As we delve into Gandhi's extraordinary journey, it begs the question, in a world still plagued by conflict and injustice, what lessons can we glean from his life and work? How can we apply his principles of nonviolence, truth, and compassion to the challenges we face today?
It's a question worth pondering. Gandhi's life wasn't just about achieving Indian independence. It was about demonstrating a different way of living, one rooted in peace, justice, and human dignity.
His story is a testament to the transformative power of those ideals, reminding us that even the smallest acts of courage and compassion can ripple outwards, creating waves of change that extend far beyond our time and place.
Well, that concludes our deep dive into the life and legacy of Mahatma Gandhi. We hope this exploration has provided you with a deeper understanding of this remarkable man and his enduring impact on the world.
And as you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on Gandhi's teachings and consider how you might embody his spirit of nonviolence, truth, and service in your own life.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.